February 14th, 2008. I was sitting on the edge of a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, practicing my daily meditation, when I heard a voice from deep within me say, "Get out now before he kills you. You need to learn to love yourself more than you love him." Even though it was Valentine's Day, my heart was breaking. A year earlier, I had discovered some painful truths about my marriage. As much as my codependent thinking was arguing for me to stay in the marriage, I knew I needed to leave. My husband may not have posed a physical threat, but the emotional abuse was killing me. I was a shell of the woman he'd met 18 years earlier. Back then, I'd been a successful Hollywood stylist. But on that day, as I overlooked the ocean, I felt like a rag doll with all the stuffing pulled out. I was a nervous wreck, and any confidence I'd once had was now in shreds. This wasn't the first narcissistic relationship I'd been in, but I was determined it was going to be my last. To say I had a dysfunctional childhood would be an understatement. I was born in 1959 in a pious and puritanical community in North Wales, an idyllic part of the UK. However, my childhood was not ideal, and my mother was neither pious nor puritanical. It was the 50s, but she was not your typical June Cleaver housewife. Instead, she was a maverick who danced to the beat of her own drum. I was the product of an 8-year affair she had with my father, a married man who lived in the nearby village with his wife and 2 daughters. Their affair was no secret to his wife or to the community. I was referred to as the little bastard and illegitimate. In my innocence, I thought illegitimate meant that I wasn't as legitimate as others, therefore I didn't have a right to exist. In addition to being called these names, my father never acknowledged me as his child. On my way to the village school each day, I would pass his house, and on the rare occasion I'd see him standing on his front doorstep, I would stare in his direction, just hoping our eyes would meet. They never did. Instead, he would avert his gaze and look the other way and pretend he hadn't seen me. Later on at school, during recess, I would play a game in the far corner of the playground, and I would spin around like a top, just hoping to get a glimpse of him, sneaking a peek at me through the chain-link fence. And he was never there. In my naivety, I thought all fathers must love their children, so his rejection of me must mean that I wasn't good enough to be loved. I thought if I had just been pretty enough, clever enough, sweet enough, kind enough, any of the enoughs you can think of, that he would want to claim me as his child. He never did. My home life was also challenging. As a single parent trying to raise 7 children, my mother did anything she could to raise money to care for us. So she rented this rambling big mansion and converted it into a residential home for people with mental disabilities. Now, while she slept in separate quarters, my siblings and I slept amongst the patients. There were no locks on our doors, no privacy, no safety. Imagine one flew over the cuckoo's nest, and I think you'll get the picture. Between my father's abandonment and my mother's neglect, I grew up believing that I wasn't worthy of being loved. I didn't know it at the time, but both my parents were narcissists, and their lack of love and attention was due to their deficits, not mine. Unfortunately, when we grow up in a dysfunctional environment, we tend to blame ourselves, not our parents. It's easier for us to think there's something wrong with us than believe that the people who are supposed to love and care for us are incapable of doing so. Growing up feeling unloved by our parents, we find it hard to love ourselves. When we don't love and value ourselves, we feel worthless and empty inside. When we feel empty inside, we look for outside validation. That sets us up for the seduction and flattery and love bombing of a narcissist. Then, once we're caught in that web of that narcissistically abusive relationship, we find it hard to leave, believing this is all we deserve. It's important to remember that our children are our greatest gifts. And as parents, it's our responsibility to love our children unconditionally. When we raise our children in a happy, healthy, loving environment, they grow up to be happy, healthy, loving adults who know how to give and receive love. As painful as the end of my marriage was, it was the beginning of my journey towards finding self-love. Instead of doing my usual jumping from one dysfunctional relationship to the next, I decided to spend the next 2 years alone. During that time, I studied for my master's in spiritual psychology. Those 2 years were pivotal in my healing. First, I learned how my childhood contributed to me developing codependency. Furthermore, I learned why I was attracted to narcissistic men. But most importantly, I learned self-love. When I first heard the words of the French priest and philosopher Pierre Adey-Jones say, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience," I felt chills running up my spine. I finally got it. If we are both spiritual and human rolled into one, and we all come from the same spiritual energy that creates all living things, then that meant that I was equal to everyone else on the planet. For somebody that always felt less than, this was life-changing for me. Looking back, I realized that all my relationships have served as a mirror reflecting back to me how I felt about myself. When I didn't love and respect myself, my partner didn't love and respect me. When I didn't see myself as equal to everyone else, my partner didn't see me as equal to him. And when I abused myself, my partner abused me. The relationship we have with ourselves is the most important relationship of all, and self-love is the most important love of all. When we truly learn to love ourselves, the universe reflects that love back to us. It was only once I learned to truly love myself did I attract a partner who truly loved me. I'm happy to say for the last 13 years, I have been in the most wonderful relationship with a beautiful man who loves, cherishes, and respects me. And I can honestly say I've never been happier. And my relationships aren't the only area of my life that has improved. Now that I love and honor myself, I've stopped hiding out and playing small. I'm no longer that sad, illegitimate little girl who didn't think she had a right to exist. Now I take my rightful place on this planet. I know that my voice matters, and by sharing my story, I'm giving hope to others that they too can overcome their childhood trauma and learn to love themselves. For the last 15 years, Valentine's Day has held a very special place in my heart. It's not only the day that I celebrate my love for my children and my partner, more importantly, it's the day I celebrate my love for myself. In addition to the cards that I buy for my loved ones, I buy a card for myself. And in it, I write everything that I love and appreciate about me. And I invite you to do the same. But why wait until Valentine's Day? Why not start today by writing a card or a love letter to yourself, expressing what a beautiful, incredible, unique, lovable being you are. Thank you.